Record. Hello, everybody. It's Mari-Lyn here. I'm with Hard at Work, and the podcast is about creating an impactful legacy, or how to create impactful legacy. So I have on the call with me Martha Lewis, and she's going to tell us how we can. So welcome, Martha. And I know you're in blistery cold Wyoming, but
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mari-Lyn.
yeah, thanks, Martha. So tell me a little bit how you got started doing what you're doing, and just kind of maybe introduce yourself a little bit from there.
Yeah, well, I am a sleep consultant for high achievers who want to sleep but can't. And I got into sleep world actually when my son was a baby and he wasn't sleeping. And I ended up hiring a sleep consultant for his sleep. And then it changed my life so much that I became a sleep consultant to help parents with their babies and kids sleep, to
Yeah,
help babies sleep. Yeah.
yeah.
And then the ironic thing is that even after my son was sleeping, I still wasn't sleeping.
Mm,
My insomnia started in late pregnancy, which I figured was hormones, but it
yeah.
didn't go away even after my son was sleeping through the night at 6 months old, and for another year after that. So I finally had enough. And luckily, Dana Obelman, who I did the baby sleep certification with, also
Mhm.
offered an adult sleep certification course.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so I took that. I went into it pretty skeptical that it would help because I already knew a lot about sleep. But it turns out that I did need to make multiple changes kind of to my habits and the timing of things
Hmm.
to get back to sleeping how I used to, which is great,
Right.
pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And then more recently, I did another certification learning about testing for underlying health issues that affect sleep.
Hmm.
And so now I'm excited to help people in this really big way, because I think that sleep is so important
Right.
for our health, for our day-to-day life,
Hmm.
and to really have the success we want and to make the difference we want to make in the world.
Right. Right. Of course. Yeah, I know if you're lacking sleep or you wake up in the middle of the night and go like, and so how do you get back to sleep, kind of thing. So I think it's really important. And of course, without a lack of sleep, I'm sure that you found that we are not very productive. We're kind of not focused and everything else that happens along with that. So tell us a little bit, some of the obstacles that you find that your clients have about not sleeping.
Well, a lot of it is stress related,
Mm-hmm.
and it all has to do with our hormone cortisol, which is one of our stress hormones
Right.
that should be 0 at night.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're constantly stressed all day long, then it's going to be hard for your cortisol levels to lower at night when it should. And so
Mm-hmm.
that can make it hard to fall asleep and stay asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And other things that I see now are more real physiological reasons that are keeping you from sleeping. So,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the people I work with, they already know, okay, I don't watch screens before bed. I don't drink, coffee at 6 o'clock at night. They know the basics, and yet
Right.
they still aren't sleeping. And so to me, that means something is going on in their body that's keeping them from sleeping
Right.
and causing cortisol to be released at night. And so that could be anything from an unhealthy gut,
Mm-hmm.
like having a parasite or bacterial overgrowth or food sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things cause inflammation, and
Mm-hmm.
cortisol is also an anti-inflammatory hormone.
Right.
So then your body will release that at times it's not supposed to, totally keeping you up at night, which is really
Uh,
frustrating.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. So I guess you would have to know a little bit more about nutrition and all those things to help people diagnose all that for themselves, right?
Yeah, it's cool. And I actually have a background in nutrition as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it's come full circle for me that,
Right.
yeah, that I'm now
Yeah.
using that in helping people sleep.
Right. Right. Okay. Good. So what are some of the biggest challenges you have or you see that people make um, that they don't get enough sleep or you have to deal with? They're dealing with them. It's two
Well, it's funny. It's funny.
problems.
It's funny. The first client I worked with over a year ago said, I don't know why you want to with sleep deprived people were really grumpy and irritable. And she was very grumpy and irritable. So, but I just imagine that affecting their relationships of, with their family, their loved ones,
Mhm.
their coworkers, with everyone around them. So, yeah, so I get it. I think that it is super important in our relationships as well as
Mhm.
that we're getting sleep.
Okay. So, can you just share maybe an experience, a success story that you had working with a client?
Yeah, sure. So, one of my clients, I remember he called me because for 20 years he had been waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. every
Mhm.
single night.
Mhm.
And so it's one of those things where he'd go to sleep fine, and then 3 hours later, he was wide awake and couldn't go back to sleep.
Mhm.
And he had just been dealing with it for a long time. So we started working together, and this was before I did the lab testing. So
Yeah.
we mainly worked on stress and his habits, things he did before bed, what he did even first thing in the morning. Pretty much starting your day in a relaxing way is really important. Ending
Right.
your day in a relaxing way is really important, and everything you do in between. But really managing that stress too,
Mhm.
so that you can fall asleep and stay asleep.
Okay. Okay. So, what happened to the guy that you were working with? You looked at his stress. So, what did you do for him? How did you, you know,
Yeah. Well,
stop his non-sleep?
right. Well, my complete sleep solution program addresses all the lifestyle and habits factors that affect sleep.
Mhm.
So, like I said, stress was a big part of it. I looked at diet, I
Mhm.
looked at exercise, I looked at his mindset around sleep, and then the basic sleep hygiene, his bedroom environment, things like that. So, really um, putting everything together. But to manage his stress, I had him do a morning meditation, and wake up and journal and start the day off
Mhm.
stress free,
Mhm.
which, think of how a lot of us start the day off is waking up to an alarm,
Mhm.
snoozing a couple times, rushing around because you're running late, running out the door, starting your day. And so you're just starting the day with your cortisol levels really high, and
Mhm.
it's hard for them to regulate at that point. So again, starting with that in the morning of keeping stress levels low, and then that will help keep them lower throughout the day.
Mhm.
But yeah, meditation was a big thing that I recommended. I also recommend gratitude.
Mhm.
So writing down what you're grateful for, that puts you in a very positive,
Mhm.
unstressed state of mind.
Right.
So that really helps people sleep as well. And then, I dive deep into what's going on in their head.
Right.
So so it's going to be different for everyone, but just talking about what are the voices in your head, and is that congruent with the life you're wanting to live?
Mhm.
Or if you're worried about something, is it
Right.
something that you can control or not control? And if you
Mhm.
control it, it's time to let it go.
Mhm.
And if you can control it, then it's time to take responsibility for it and
Right.
make the change. So
Right.
just those types of things I get into.
Okay. Okay. So it gives me a better idea of, so it's not just your eating habits, it's your mindset and how self-aware you are as a person.
Right.
All those things are important. Yeah. So, tell me maybe a situation that didn't go well, but you still learned something from that experience.
Well, my first client, who was tricky, who I already mentioned, she was, this was a client I saw to get my certification. So I
Right.
gave her a very discounted rate.
Right.
And so I think that when that happens, that people aren't truly invested. And so
Right.
she wouldn't follow a lot of my recommendations and was just very resistant to everything I suggested. And
Mm,
so obviously, if she doesn't change anything, then nothing's going to change. So that
right.
was very tricky. And it was a good lesson for me about, you know, having people be invested is actually
Mhm.
going to make them more likely to follow through
Right.
with my recommendations.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big lesson to learn.
Yeah, I think every time we see a client or we do something for somebody, it's not just the financial investment. It's like, if they're not willing to do anything to change the situation, it, other results show up, and that may be a lack of sleep or, something else will be a negative in their life, right?
Right.
So, tell me a little bit more about how you create an impactful legacy. Doing what you're doing, how do you think it's creating an impactful legacy
For me or for my clients?
for you and your clients, whatever, however you see it as?
Okay. Well, for me, you know, I've always had this feeling that I want to make a bigger difference. Like
Mm-hmm.
I spent a long time in a ski town, being a ski bum, snowboarding a lot, which was really fun. And once I hit around 30, then that's when really was like, I want to do something more than just this. So that's when I went and studied nutrition. And then it was around 40 when I had my son, and everything has changed for me since then by
Right.
becoming an entrepreneur and going on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm excited to help people sleep better because I think that it also improves your entire life,
Right.
right? So it improves, as we talked about, your health. It improves how you interact with everyone and how you feel every day.
Right.
And I know from personal experience that when you're not sleeping, it's hard to be motivated
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to be positive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that if someone is trying to do something great in the world and they're sleep deprived, they're not fully able to do that.
Right.
And so I want others to be able to make the difference that they want to make in the world as well. And
Right.
I think you need a good night's sleep every night to do that.
Right. So that's how you feel you're making an impactful legacy in your own life and in somebody else's life.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, is there any couple of tips that you can share that somebody that might be watching this video is looking for something to get started? So is there something you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. I have some tips for, if you're having a hard time falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So either if that's at the beginning of the night or if you're awake in the middle of the night, you definitely want to make sure that you are doing things that will help you go back to sleep instead of sabotaging your sleep,
Right.
I would say. So the first thing I recommend, if you aren't sleeping and you think it's been about 10 or 20 minutes, you haven't been able to go to sleep, then I suggest getting out of bed and actually leaving your bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because you want your brain to have a strong association between your bed and sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who haven't been sleeping well, they don't have that association anymore.
Okay.
Their brain now says, oh, in bed is where I lie along awake, stressing out for long periods of time. So, yes, we really want to reestablish that connection. So I suggest getting out of bed, leaving the bedroom, keeping the lights dim, doing something relaxing.
Yeah.
You don't want it to involve screens
Yeah.
because screens emit blue light, which suppresses melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to read or do a crossword puzzle, or if your thoughts are racing or you're worried about something, then that's when I recommend journaling and
Mm-hmm.
getting everything out of your brain and onto paper.
Right.
But you don't want to do anything that is going to increase your cortisol.
Right.
So that's why you don't
Like,
want to be on screens. You don't
mm-hmm.
want to be scrolling through the news or Facebook or, anything that's going to stress you out.
Yeah.
And you also don't want to be lying in bed just stressed that you can't go back to sleep.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's the main thing I suggest is getting out of bed. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really hard the first few nights. I've done it.
Yeah.
But eventually your brain gets it. Okay, when I'm in bed, I sleep. Otherwise, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was just kind of chuckling because I'm always scrolling on the phone. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. And then before you know it, it's like 3 or 4 hours later rather than just the one.
Oh, no.
But, I make up for it, so it's okay. But, yeah, that's a great tip. So anyway, do you have any other questions or comments you want to make before we end up the call, or do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think it's mainly that I believe that we are meant to sleep well.
Mm-hmm.
and our brains, our bodies they need to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to give hope for people who aren't sleeping that you can figure it out. We can get to the root cause of why you aren't sleeping by
Mm-hmm.
doing these lab tests um, and figure it out. And so I just don't want you to be lying awake at night thinking that it has to be like this forever.
Right, right. So you mentioned lab tests. So what is that? What is that lab test? What are they about?
So I do, let's see, I do one on hormones, on
Mm-hmm.
thyroid. I do a hair tissue mineral analysis,
Mm-hmm.
and food sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do a GI map that shows what kind of parasites, bacteria, fungus you have in your gut, the good
Mm-hmm.
and the bad, which gives a really great view of your overall health. So all
Right.
of those together
Mm-hmm.
combined
Mm-hmm.
are what give me the big picture about what's going on.
Right. So it sounds like sleep, a lack of sleep is really a red flag to say, oh, something's wrong with me, with my body. And
Exactly.
either I'm missing something, or I'm not eating properly, or I'm eating too much of one thing, or there's something else going on in my body, as that's why you're doing the lab test. So, so I guess, when you first indicate that you're not getting enough sleep every night, you have to stop and check and say, okay, what's going on, right?
Right.
And
Yep,
then,
exactly.
you would probably call Martha, who will help you figure it out. She'll diagnose your whole body system for you.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not technically diagnosing, but yes.
But like, or inspecting, or
Yeah.
it's like the mystery hunt. What do you call them? Those, like when you hunt for eggs, treasure hunt. So you're like
Yeah.
doing a treasure hunt, finding out why you're not sleeping.
Yeah. I like to call myself a sleep detective.
Yeah, there you go. The sleep detective,
Yep.
non-sleep detective. Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining me on the call today, Martha. It was very informational and educational. And I'm sure that anybody that has a lack of sleep, and I'm sure you're not a lack of clients, because there's probably many people out there that have that challenge. So, well, thank you for joining me today. And you'll be posted on the website, which is podcast.heartatworkonline.org. And of course, you'll be on Anchor as well, and everything else. So you can hear more about Martha there. If you want to reach out to her, you can reach out to her there. And if they want to reach out to you now, Martha, and they don't want to wait for me to post, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, my website is thecompletesleepsolution.com.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I've got links there to sign up for a call with me. I also have a couple free ebooks on there as well.
Okay.
That would be really helpful.
Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much again, Martha, for joining me. And uh, have a happy rest of the Saturday, and just enjoy yourself. So,
Okay, thanks.
and my last line is always about be kind, just really be helpful to each other. So, thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.